Okay, so if you watch the previous video with Saul Khan from Khan Academy, where he was describing the problem of having to fit certain amount of people around a rectangular table, and you can see if you start out with one table, you have basically let's put our chart. Let's get our good old chart out again here. If you have one table, you end up with a number of people here. All right, and that gives you 6 people. Okay, and if you keep doing this all the way, let's do a couple of these here so we get the idea. All right, so we see here that if you have 2 tables, that basically gives you 10 people. All right, and if you have 3 tables, you'll see that, and again, please go back and review this Saul Khan's video, as you'll see that each time it increments by 4, right? So if you have 4 tables, you have 18, okay? So now, so the pattern that you want to start to take a look at as you try to study this a little bit more is, again, you're increasing in this case by 4 people each time you add a table, and you can see what's happening here. Let me switch colors here so I can better identify it here. So this shared side here, if this person comes here, this person always is added to the end of the table, so you're not adding new people here, and these 4 people, right, get shifted here. So then you can see it's clear every time you add a table, really the only thing that is new is, right, the 4 people here, because everybody else pretty much gets shifted. All right, but still the question is, if I have let's say 50 people, how many tables will I need, right? So this is the key. We want to figure out what the rule, right? What the algorithm is, right? That way, if we figure that out, then we can pretty much input. Again, here's some other vocabulary, right? We want to input a certain number of people, right, to be able to get our output. Okay? So let's think about this now. So if we have, let's go back to our table here, which is pretty handy. So one table, and if we're constantly adding 4, another way you can think about it is, you're multiplying, by 2, by 3, in this case, and then really it looks like you're adding 2. So let's say if we start out here, multiply 2 times 4, that's 8, and then plus 2, right? That gives us 10. Let's try to see if that works here. 2 times 4 plus 2, right? So 3 times 4 is 12, plus 2 gives us 14, right? Let's see, 3 times, or 4 times 4 rather, is 16 plus 2. That gives us, so we're seeing this pattern. And where does this 4 come from? Right? So this 4, well, if you think about it, here is where we're getting that from, right? Because we're constantly adding, right? Adding a certain amount of 4s, right? How many of those? So basically, that's the idea here, right? And so 4 times 4 is 16, and then you keep going. So now the idea. Now, how do we work backwards now from that? So if we know that to get the number of people, let's see if we could work this out. So 10 people, if we're adding 2 on this side here, if we're adding 2 to the multiplication of 2 times 4, right? So let's see if we could look at this rule here. I'm going to just erase some of this here to give us some more room. So if we are, let's do this here. So if we know that the number of tables, right? So I'll put that here, number of tables. So we'll call short for put T here, number of tables. And we're saying times 4 plus 2 equals to the number of people. Okay? Now, the issue here, though, is that we got to figure out what our inputs are. So typically, someone doesn't come into a party and say, well, I've got 40 tables, right? A person will come in and say, I've got a party that's going to have, let's say 50 people or 100 people. And now, as the business owner, right, I need to then know, I need to figure out how many tables, right, I'm going to need, okay, to be able to do that. But so let's see if we can figure out this equation, right, if I were to do this now. So to be able to figure out P, to be able to figure out how many tables you need, though, right? So this is really what you want to do. You need to then try to get rid of, or what we call isolating a particular variable, right? So if you want to be able to get T, then you need to isolate the rest of, you need to isolate it, right? So let's see. So now what we need to do, let me give us some room here to work as I think out loud here. So we need to first take away 2 from both sides, okay? When we do that, we're going to get T for tables, right? That comes down, still multiplied by 4, right? I'll just change it to parentheses here. So T times 4 equals to P minus 2. All right, then what we'll do is we'll do the, to isolate T, we're going to divide both sides by 4. So those 4's cancel out. So then what we'll get here, give us some space here. So really what your final thing is basically is that P minus 2, or the number of people. Somebody gives you the number of people, right? And all you have to do is take away 2 and then divide it by 4, and that gives you the number of tables that you're going to need, okay? So that's our algorithm, or our formula, all right? So let's see if this works with some of the simpler examples, right? So let's try it with 6 people. Let's see that we didn't look at that, right? So let me give us some room here. Okay. so let's try this. Let me change a color here. Give us a little. All right, so if we're saying, let's plug it into the formula here. So if we say we have 6 people, take away 2 divided by 4, how many tables are we going to need? So, well, 6 minus 2 is 4, right? And 4 divided by 4 is 1, okay? And that does give you the correct number. So it works for the simplest case, right? So now let's take a look for, another case. So basically we would say if we had 50 people coming in, right, 50, so let's say that would be 50 minus 2 divided by 4. Okay, and then you can do that math and kind of get a sense of, what that's going to be. So to give you the number of tables, 50 minus 2 is what, 48. Okay, and 48 divided by 4 gives you 12. So, okay, so the answer to that, so 48 divided by 4, and your answer is 12. All right, so that sort of gives you you need 12 tables, 12T. So that gives you an idea, okay, of sort of the direction we'll be moving in, because a lot of this is kind of getting a sense of what the pattern is. Once you get the pattern, then you can kind of get a sense of what the rule is and create an algorithm that you can then program. Because really what you want to do is you want to be able to sort of program it, app inventor or whatever programming language you end up using, that your input, okay, and in this case, looking at this, the P really is what ends up getting the input, and your output is your T, okay, the number of tables. So P, and then what happens is there's a formula, right, that it gets applied to. So the P minus 2 divided by 4, all right? So that's going to be sort of the general pattern here, okay? Hopefully this didn't go too long for you, and hopefully this is helpful. Okay, take care.